Hello and welcome to the latest webinar in the Great International Education and Schools Fair. And I'm delighted to introduce today what to look for in a school in the Middle East, Africa and Europe. And now I hand over to our host for today, Jane Constantinis.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Good afternoon from a rather grey and drizzly London. Welcome. We have a webinar for you this afternoon, guaranteed to brighten up your day wherever in the world you're joining us from. Because what we have for you in the next hour is some very practical advice and guidance if you're planning a move to the regions that Fiona has just mentioned, or if at some point in the future you might be contemplating such a move. We have a really expert panel for you. Collectively in their heads, they have everything you need to be able to make the right decision for your family and for your children. Let me introduce them to you. It's going to take me practically the whole hour to read out their qualifications. Dr. Sergio Pawel is head of school at the International School of London, Qatar. He's got 30 years of experience in the field of education in the UK, South America, Middle East. He holds an MSc in nuclear physics, an MPhil in the philosophy of science and a PhD in education. He participated in the development of the Science English National Curriculum, the IB Science in the Middle Years, and the IB Diploma Physics programs. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Pawel. And where are you joining us from this afternoon?
Well, good afternoon. I'm joining you from Doha, from a very sunny, now the sunset is the evening now here, but it's a very warm winter in Qatar.
Oh, well, we're delighted to have you with us. Thank you for sparing the time to join us. Dr. Tim Stewart is head of school at the International Community School of Addis, Ababa. Previously, Tim served as Executive Director of Strategic Programs at the Singapore American School, where he was also the high school principal. He was formerly head high school principal of the Jakarta International School. In fact, he's been an international and cross-cultural educator for 29 years in, get this list of countries, Ethiopia, Turkey, Switzerland, Indonesia, Singapore, and on a Navajo reservation in the US. That's rather interesting. Dr. Tim, welcome. Where are you joining us from?
I'm joining you from a very sunny Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. It's great to be with you.
It's great to have you. Catalina Gardescu is Manager of Admissions and External Relations at the American International School of Bucharest. So she heads the Admissions, Communications and External Relations Department. And her portfolio of work includes a huge list: parent interviews, admission projections, publications and communications, parent relations, fundraising, alumni relations, and strategic marketing. And she's part of the leadership team of the school. Catalina, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. And it's nice to say hello from Bucharest with nice fall colors.
Great. Fiona Mckenzie is head of Carfax Education UAE. Now, Fiona's comprehensive understanding of the education sector has been built up over 30 years, working in schools and education consultancy, locations as varied as South Africa, Australia, the UK and the UAE. Fiona's worked with literally hundreds of families, guiding them to make the best educational choices for their children, whether that's school or university level. As head of the global consultancy at Carfax Education, her team advises families from right across the globe, including the Middle East, Russia and China. And of course, so welcome to you, Fiona. Fiona's frozen for the moment. That's an internet connection problem, but no doubt we'll get her back in a few moments. I'll say welcome to Fiona, and of course the other Fiona. It's the Fiona Show. The other Fiona Murchie is joining us as well. So we have, I think you'll agree, a fantastic panel of experts for you this afternoon. I wonder if I can begin by asking a very general question, actually, but something no doubt our viewers are thinking about, and that is, what does it mean to be a global citizen in the 21st century? And what role can schools play in achieving that? And I wonder if I can start with you, Sergio, on that one.
Oh, thank you. Very complex question, and complex because it changes. If you had asked me this question before the pandemic, I probably would be thinking a different way. For me, the key word, the key expression that symbolizes what a global citizen person is beyond being aware and is going towards being able to engage with in different situations, in different contexts, in different cultural settings with different people. So being a global citizen is this very loose ability that one develops by both learning about, experiencing, and engaging with different cultures, and acting in different settings that are outside your local experience. What can school do about this? What's the second part of the question? Schools, especially international schools, are normally in a good position to bring different cultural settings and to open the students' horizons to levels of engagement with cultures and communities that are often not accessible to a local school working in a region where only one culture dominates.
That's very interesting. Catalina, I wonder if you'd agree with that, and if your perception of what a global citizen has also changed because of the pandemic.
Thank you. I was actually making a note exactly about the difference of my schooling, which was in a Romanian school with one nationality, and my other schooling, which I call my 2 decades at the American school with 65 nationalities. I think that global citizenship is where you have transitioned from simply having, festivals that show traditional food and dances, which are all nice. And then you have educated your students with a mindset that they pay attention to the way they speak, they pay attention about the way they approach various subjects, because they understand that others who are different than us may be right in their perceptions. And I think when we get there, we really, as an international school, would have done a good job.
Fiona, welcome back. You momentarily popped off, but you have returned.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Great. We're looking at this initial question about global citizenship and what it means. What's your perception of that and how schools can help to foster it?
I think it's such an interesting question, and having sort of worked in education all over the world, one of the things I love about being in Dubai is walking into a school and walking into a classroom and just seeing just a completely kind of rainbow selection of students there. And it is that kind of intercultural understanding, I think, that these environments foster. These children will be multilingual, they'll be culturally attuned to lots of different kind of backgrounds. It really is an extraordinary phenomenon witnessing these children and their kind of global perspective. And what I love is that the children here look 360. So, if they're thinking about going on to further education, they'll find the best course wherever it is in the world. It's a very open mindset. It's a very growth mindset.
Yes, thank you for that. Your signal is not brilliant, but we'll hope we'll hold on to you for the whole hour. Tim, your thoughts on what it means to be a global citizen, and do you agree with this concept that it's not just about observing other cultures, but about immersing yourself in them?
Yeah, I would agree with everything the panelists have said so far. I do believe it is both a mindset of globalism and also a skill development. It's both and really that's kind of where the schools come in. With regards to kind of I think it's another way to look at it is, what is it not? And over the last couple of years, we have seen an emergence of nationalism happening around the world, really. In my own country, in the United States, whether it's in France and England, a rise of nationalism has been prevalent globally. And I think the global citizenship stands in contrast to that. That a global citizen believes that their answer is not the only answer, that they're better to actually inquire and to ask questions as to how other people view a particular situation, as opposed to being dogmatic about their own perspective. And so really, I think the world has shown us over the last couple of years how ugly this nationalism or ethnocentrism can be, and global citizenship stands in contrast to that.
We need these global citizens, don't we, going forwards? I wonder if I can hone in now on something more specific, and this is particularly relevant for people who are perhaps at the beginning of their decision-making process. I wonder, Fiona, if you could give us an overview of the various types of curriculum that are available across these regions. Well, I would have asked Fiona to talk to us about that, but Fiona's popped off again for yet another cup of tea and a biscuit. So we'll come back to Fiona in a moment, and perhaps we can look at that. We can look at different types of curriculum offerings from the heads of the school. So I wonder, Sergio, if you'd begin by telling us about your school and what you offer.
Right. The International School of London in Qatar offers the IB program, from PYP in the primary, middle years, the MYP, and the diploma and the pre-university. So in this sense, we offer only one program.
Yeah. Okay. And Catalina, what about you?
We also offer the IB program. The only thing that I would like to add is that in the early learning years, we have now taken on the Regio approach, which is something that matches quite well the primary years program. And just to add to that response, it is not within our school, but the next other international school in Bucharest is the British School of Bucharest, which offers the A levels.
Okay, great. And Tim, tell us about your school's offering, please, from a curricular perspective.
Yeah, I would say it's very similar. Our early years is our IB primary years program. Early years program, which is also very Regio inspired. We have our PYP program, the primary years program, and in the elementary school. We have our own program in the middle school, and then we move into the IB, the International Baccalaureate Diploma program for our high school.
Okay. Fiona, what I asked you, I didn't realize you weren't there, to give us, oh, and she's gone again. For her.
Just interject, I'm sure Fiona would say, but obviously there are a range of international schools that would offer a sort of country curriculum. So they may be offering the French and the IB, or they may be offering the American and the IB, or German or similar. So there is quite a range, and families can also look at curriculums and choose via what's being taught and move around the world, as well as using something like the IB or a particular curriculum. And school groups also is another way of accessing different curriculums.
And so, Fiona, what should be on the checklist for parents thinking about the different options in terms of curriculum? Well,
I suppose really it's the children's aptitude obviously comes into it, but also possibly what is their first language, and if they're bilingual or multilingual, how strongly they want to keep up that native language. But of course, a huge number of international schools offer that facility, as we just heard. I think it's also really it's about the individual child as well, and the feel of the school as much as anything. So I think that Catalina is the real expert on this, but I mean, I think she would recommend that people just soak up and listen to what schools have on offer, the parents, the pupils, and the teachers, and see what is the right fit for that particular child. And of course, if you have 3 children, it may not be that 2 of them have the similar requirements to the 3rd one.
Of course. Okay, Fiona is back. Let's grab you while we can. We were looking at curricula, and we were looking at the different options that parents should consider in these regions. Give us, if you can, an overview of what is available.
Well, there's a huge range, and actually I've been able to hear most of what people have been saying, so you can't hear me. But I think we've obviously kind of covered the main ones, which is the British curriculum, which is hugely popular in a lot of different countries, the IB curriculum, which is increasingly popular, the American curriculum, again, and obviously out here in the UAE, we actually have over 17 different curriculums on offer. Which is quite exceptional. Everything from the Japanese and the Chinese. In fact, a Chinese school has just opened this year, all the way through to obviously the British, the American, the Indian, and the IB curriculum. I think it's very much about finding the right curriculum for your child, what sort of style of learning they have. And also, I think it's also very important to think about where your sort of career journey is going to go and where you may go next, and to think about the transferability of the curriculum. If you are going to be one of those families that's highly mobile, that you can move that curriculum around. Because obviously in some curriculums there are key moments where it's quite tricky to transition, particularly in the British curriculum if you're midway through a GCSE or an A-level program, whereas the American system and the IB up to NYP is much more kind of transferable. And actually, I've just been working with some French students, and what's brilliant about that is you can pretty much pick it up and move country and go into the same lesson the following day, and it'll be being taught in the same way. So I think transferability is very important for mobile families to think about when they're choosing a curriculum.
And also, presumably, what the child is going to go on to do after school. Are there any particular systems that channel young people into a particular direction, whether that's university or jobs? What's your experience of that, Catalina?
We actually work with a range of counselors to hear, first of all, what the students want and what the parents can do, because that's a huge element. Most of the students, unless there is a particular family tradition or family desire, they go on to international colleges, mostly in the US or the UK. Of course, a lot is affected right now by, well, before COVID, it was affected by the way things, for example, stood in the US, by Brexit, in terms of the financial conditions they got or how easy they could have gotten into college. Nowadays, parents tend to want the kids to be a little closer. So there is a lot that comes. Excuse my dog, sorry.
Glad to have him or her on the call. Sergio, what do your students typically go, or is there a typical go on to do once they've left you?
I think divide them into 3 groups. The school here in Qatar has about 22% locals, Qatari students, and those are divided roughly half girls and half boys, and the girls tend to go into local universities. The boys, I think, have some goals into the US college system, or Germany or UK, I think, is the preferences. The other 80% are very international. They're made of people from all over the world, including Europe and America. And many of those are aiming to go into college in their country of origin. The majority of our students that choose a third country, a country that's not their country of origin, would be going to the UK.
Okay. Let's move on from curriculum now, or should I say academic matters, to extracurricular activities and facilities. Fiona, how big a consideration is that usually for parents choosing where to send their children?
I think it plays a key role in a parent's choice, because education is so much more than just the academics. And I think that's what we've really realized in the pandemic, is when children were learning remotely, how much they missed that connectivity and all the extracurricular activities that they're used to doing. So I think that is a big part of it. And we're very blessed in this part of the world to have a lot of very new schools with some amazing facilities. I often have families coming and showing them around over here, and they'll say, gosh, I can't imagine schools could be as good as the one we've come from. And then I show them some of the schools here, and they're like, oh my word, I had no idea that this existed. So yes, I think it's things like sport, drama, music, those things that develop the kind of social skills, the confidence, the critical thinking. So ECAs are very important.
Tim, how much emphasis do you place on the extracurricular activities for your children?
Yeah, I think, as was mentioned, I like to call them co-curricular programs, because they're not beyond the curriculum, but they are co-constructed and aligned with our curriculum. But I actually think that there's also a shift globally happening around the world in terms of the importance of the types of skills and dispositions that are developed in the so-called co-curricular programs that are actually being correlated with student success and students actually thriving in this uncertain world. And so the traditional academic skills are actually potentially diminishing in value, in contrast with some of the other skills that we would consider soft skills that are developed in the so-called co-curricular programs. And I think that that's something that every parent should be considering, is how are we going to develop great human beings and people that are going to go out there and change the world? It's not necessarily going to be in your higher level math class.
And what sort of skills? I mean, I don't like calling them soft skills either. My passion is communication. I don't think it's a soft skill. I think it's a fundamental life skill. I'm sure you agree. But what are the areas that you're referring to?
Well, if you think of skills like critical thinking and communication and collaboration and creativity, these are all skills that traditional curriculum have not necessarily emphasized. And I would say that as a parent, if you're looking for a school, you want to make sure that they're actually a school that is focused on developing the whole child, not just the cognitive or the traditional academic skills.
Catalina, you're nodding furiously. What would you add?
Model United Nations. The kids get to actually debate as the United Nations. I should probably say more seriously, I'm sure kids are always better than adults. They have to study, they don't represent their own country. They have to study another country, debate something from the point of view of that country. That develops a myriad of skills. And the other two things that I wanted to mention is also service learning, as we call them. So community service with a learning component, and internships for the juniors and seniors. Because if we are going to build the whole human, we might as well give them a taste of what the world of work is, and that there are other people in this world that are not as happy as we are.
It's interesting. We were having a conversation the other day about the workplace, 21st century workplace, and how to prepare young people for it. And this idea of critical thinking came up very, very strongly. Sergio, is that something that you would agree with as well?
Indeed, and this is central to an educational program that follows the IB. I think that critical thinking, yes, it could be part and integrated into the curriculum, but it's very much linked to your initial question of what it means to be a a global citizen. And also with your last question about extracurricular, co-curricular activities, which branch into service learning activities. Being able to confront with ambiguous situations in more disfavorable places. So working in a community, either via an internet access or in person as before the pandemic, is an essential tool, as we discovered, to develop critical thinking.
Fiona, have you seen a change? I'm thinking of all the decades that you've been working with parents, helping them to make these informed decisions. Do you see that parents now are valuing the co-curricular activities as much as the academic offer?
Yes, I mean, I think that there's always going to be a strong focus on the academics, but I think parents are very cognitive of the fact that their children are going to need a very broad skill set when they kind of enter the world of employment. And that is about team working, it's about being agile, it's about being intellectually curious. And those things can be sparked in an academic environment, of course they can, but they're supplemented so well by, as for example, we talked about the Model United Nations, but even just taking part in a drama production, you know, you have that incredible team building, you have to memorize lines, there's so much that goes into that sort of experience. And children never forget those things, those learning by doing activities, I think, stay with them for a long time, and parents are very aware of that.
One of the other words that comes up a lot when we're talking about how parents choose where they're going to send their children, the word that comes up a lot is ethos. I wonder if those of you who work in schools would share with us what your ethos, your school's ethos is, and how a parent can work out what the ethos of a school really is. Tim, I wonder if you'd start on that, please.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's a great question. I think a great place to look for an ethos in a statement is a school's vision statement. That is really the school's attempt to kind of point the direction to where they want to go, where they want their students to go and end up. At ICS here in Addis, our vision statement is our best with Africa and our world. And if you notice, our vision statement is not the best, it's your best, it's our best collectively. We want to come to our school every day doing our best. It's not our best in Africa, it's our best with Africa. And there's a nuance there, obviously, that we want to bring our best, but we want to do it in collaboration with this community that we live in, this continent. And it's not the world, it's our world. And that can be as small as your little village and as big as the globe. And so I think a great place to look for an ethos is a school's vision statement, and then ask questions about that.
With an enormous amount of respect, those statements, whilst carefully crafted, are only as good as the evidence of them. How can you look at, what should you look for in terms of what a school is doing to demonstrate they really believe in that ethos?
Are you asking me again?
Back to you, Tim.
I think how are your programs, how is what you're talking about when you're talking about students, how is it reflected with your vision statement or what you claim to be your ethos? And I think it's very easy to make alignment in saying, if you are saying that, if you are creating a competitive environment within a classroom, for example, when you're saying that this child is better than this child because this child demonstrates this kind of skill as opposed to this kind of skill, then for us that would be in violation of our ethos of being our best with. And I think you can unpack programs, you can unpack the emphasis on academics or on athletics or on co-curricular, and you can align it with what the schools say they are, who they say they are, and who they want to be.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You've got to scratch a little bit beneath the surface. Catalina, what's your ethos at your school and how do you live it?
I I fully agree with what Tim said about the vision, and I want to answer in a way your second question. I moved my office, the admissions office where I meet with parents, in the main atrium, and it's what we call a fishbowl. It's a glass walled one, because what I want the parents to see the children. We are a compassionate, courageous, and creative community. So I'm walking them in the campus and talking to them, showing them children's work, and I'm allowing them to see the children in their natural environment at school. Oh, caveat, now it's not possible that much, but when we are there, to see that they have friends, that they are happy, that they enjoy working and the classroom environment the way that it is. And so also I conduct my discussion with parents in a compassionate manner, meaning I need to be clear with them, and I need to be brave enough to say, maybe you won't be that happy here. Let me help you look for a better fit for your child sometimes.
That's interesting. Have you ever had to do that, Sergio? Say to a family, this is not the right place for you because the ethos is not a good fit?
Yes, indeed. It happens. Well, I can give some awkward examples here, but yes, we had situations where parents maybe manifested some racist tone in the way they have educated their children that clashes with our ethos. Yes, we had to often agree and disagree in the way in which we would like to move forward with the development of a child, and in many cases they choose to leave. It happens not only here in Qatar, it happens in our school in London as well.
And Fiona, when you're advising families, how much emphasis, I hope you can still hear me, and if you can still speak to us, then do carry on. Maybe turn your camera off and then you'll have a stronger signal. To what extent do you bring in these issues of ethos, and how important is it to families?
About it, I mean, it's been so fascinating to hear three different perspectives there. But all schools are about education, but what makes each school different is its ethos. So we spend a lot of time with our families unpacking what their values are, and then finding schools that where the ethos aligns with that family's values, because that's when you get a good fit. And for some families, they want that very dynamic, competitive environment, and for others, they are much more interested in that kind of creative environment. So for us, it's all about understanding what the family's values are and how that's going to fit. And I think it's, the parents, I'm always a great advocate of them visiting the schools, as I'm sure all of the rest of the panel would be, because it's something, it's almost like a thing, you feel it there when you visit a school. And it needs to be coherent and it needs to be authentic. And I think, the other panelists described very well in their schools how they live their ethos, because as you very rightly, you can have a vision statement, but if the school doesn't match up to that, then it's just a mission statement. You have got to live it and breathe it, and that needs to permeate down through all the teaching staff, through the children, and parents sense that. Go around, you kind of feel it.
And I'm guessing that it all. Oh, hello, Fiona. Yes, other Fiona. Sorry. Yes, hello.
Matt, I was just picking up. There was a question came through about learning needs and physical needs. So maybe somebody could quickly answer that one.
What is the question?
How do schools pick up and support learning needs or physical needs?
Catalina, you've got your hand up.
I'm really happy that this question came on, because I would like to make the point that especially when families are relocating with students with diverse special needs, it is even more important that they start doing their homework and looking for schools ahead of time, because there it's even more important that that it's a match with the school. So you can see on the school website if the schools are taking or not taking children with mild to severe physical needs. But even if you see something there, that for every single case, you need to look at it in detail, the mild to moderate or mild to severe doesn't say much for that particular family. So go and look for talk to people, and also come prepared with all of the documentation, because it's very important to get all the details from the start.
Tim, do you want to add anything to what Catalina said?
Yes, absolutely. I would agree that with Catalina that super important for parents to do their research, and also understand the lingo is a little bit different in an international school context than many national school contexts. So people can miss some of the jargon if they don't pay attention. So for us, internationally, the language has shifted towards inclusion as being the language of learning and learning support, as opposed to special education and some of these other languages, language that is used in national programs. So to understand the lingo is going to be important, so that you can actually ascertain whether this is a good fit for your family.
Sergio, what would your advice be to a parent looking at this particular issue?
The advice I would give directly to parents is that the more they disclose, the easier it is for the school to be prepared to support them. But at the same time, I would say that, unfortunately, there's a very large number of parents from different parts of the world that would fear that disclosing the learning needs of their children would stop them from getting access to the school. In the International School of London, we have developed a tool that decreased from 6 months to only 2 weeks, the time it takes for us to identify learning needs, because we developed a tool that is used in different languages. I think we have about 19 different languages we use that to identify first, what is the strongest language of the student. Often parents would hide that because they have an aspirational language, so they may decide that to disclose to the school that is French or English instead of Azeri or Russian. And once we discover that, and with great confidence, we apply the tool in their own language, then identify or indications that could be of underlying learning needs that have not been disclosed. This has been extremely successful for the last 10 years in reducing the time that the students go through immense difficulty, suffering, because the problem is the underlying learning needs that has not been disclosed. So, yes, my advice to parents is that if they were to disclose it from day one, it would be much easier for the student and for the school.
Interesting that you say some parents are reluctant to disclose it. Fiona, is that something you've come across?
Yes, very much so. And I think sometimes that depends on the kind of competitive nature of the schools in the location that parents are moving to. And they feel that their child might be disadvantaged by mentioning it. But actually, I think that schools have become so much more aware of neurodiversity. And I think, as the panelists were saying, there's much more a vocabulary around inclusion. And I think schools are much better set up and prepared to deal with that. But parents really need to do their homework. And I think full disclosure is by far the best way to go, so that everybody is transparent about it and that the child's needs can be met. Because there's nothing worse than the child being in the wrong environment, because that's ultimately far more damaging and far more stressful for everybody involved.
We were talking earlier about ethos and presumably a large factor in driving that and living the ethos is the leadership of the school. What does good leadership look like? Tim, what about you? I
thought I knew, and then COVID hit, and I think everything fell apart. So I don't know that I can answer that anymore, but I'll give it a go. I think leadership, good leadership in an international school involves vision. It involves having a very clear understanding of where the school is at, all the good, bad, and the ugly. So no sugarcoating of who we are and the realities of where we are, but also a clear vision as to where you want to take the school. And your leadership team wants to take the school. So I think it's about being truthful about the current status of affairs. Secondly, having a clear vision as to where we want to go, and then having the skills to actually rally the team and the people that you need to actually make it happen. So I would say those are the important things to look for in a school leader.
As you say, everything is in even sharper focus at the moment with the crisis. Catalina, what would be your observation of what good leadership generally and specifically now looks like?
I think good leadership is leadership that listens. And of course, you know your vision and you know what you can do and you know where you're going. But this component shouldn't be missing. A leadership that listens to the community of parents and the community of staff, and more so to the community of students, is one that then is connected to the people that they are leading wherever they're going. And especially in these times when there is so much uncertainty and we don't know until when, we are kind of all progressing one day at a time. So it is even more important to listen.
Yeah. We have two ears, don't we, and one mouth. And when I'm running communications courses, I always say, let's use them in that ratio. Sergio, is that something that resonates with you as being part of good leadership?
Indeed. And to me, leadership is this ability to bring together, especially in an international school, in an international environment, the different perspectives, the different voices in the school, so that it sounds and looks and feels like the school is developing in one direction. There are always, schools are very diverse and multiple changes are happening all the time. But to be able to stand out with your team and see how this all fits together and it's reinforcing one another is, to me, a great mark of leadership.
You've already mentioned the difficulties of parents not being able to look round schools at the moment. And Catalina, I love the idea of you seeing families in your beautiful atrium. Fiona, how big a problem is this for families who are looking to move to another territory and they can't physically get on the premises?
It's really challenging, and it sort of plays back to my point about sort of walking around and feeling the ethos and feeling the kind of atmosphere there. I think schools have been extraordinary in the way they've stepped up, with online open days. Schools have been made themselves very available. They've certainly managed to do assessment processes remotely, many of the schools for the first time. So they have really reached out to parents and tried to kind of meet them where they are in this current situation. But I think everyone's dying to get back to a point where they can have parents visiting the campus and students can come and see what's going on for real, because there's nothing quite like that. But I think in the circumstances, everybody's trying and doing a fantastic job given where we are.
Yeah. And Fiona M, you've got some of these virtual tours, haven't you, on your website?
Yes, well, absolutely. I mean, that was one of the reasons for bringing the festival together, because schools had to be closed and were missing the admission cycle. So you can find lots of schools on the website, many of whom contributed to our education guide, International Guide to Education in Schools, and the British Guide to International Schools. And you'll find a link. The schools are there. There's a full online directory with information about them, plus virtual tours that they've provided, and showcase videos as well.
Great. We have talked a lot about choosing a school. I wonder if I can fast forward now to the point at which a new family arrives at one of your schools. Can you give us a sense of how you help them to transition, how you help them to integrate? And I've been really struck by what you've all said about your schools being part of the community. How do you achieve that? Tim, I wonder if you can share with us what you do at your school.
Yeah, I think transition is, the research shows us that poorly managed transition is one of the worst possible things you can do for a child in their educational experience. It is actually one of the things that educationalists would advise against. And so international schools have got to develop transition programs and transition support to ensure that there is a smooth transition for the students coming from different schools and leaving to different schools, for parents and also for teachers. And so having a comprehensive program of onboarding is very, very important. And then also making sure that you're supporting those who are also staying is very, very important, because those are also people that are transitioning when their friends are leaving and they are staying. That's also a transition. So transition is very complicated, and schools need to put a lot of thought into it. And it really stems at the heart is relationships and leaning in and seeing and hearing and listening to kids and teachers and parents, and making sure that you let them tell their story, because that's at the heart of good transition.
Can you give us a concrete example of one of the elements within your transition program?
Yeah, so for us, onboarding is very, very important. So having teachers meet with individual students as they come in, having the counselors meet with them, having one-on-one. We have what we call a Hopes and Dreams conference at the beginning of every school year with all of our students, where we sit down one-on-one with every child and every parent, and we say, what are your hopes and dreams for this year? What are your fears about this year? And we truly take the time to listen to each individual child to make sure that the educational experience that they're going to receive at our school is going to meet those hopes and dreams for each one of those children.
That sounds amazing. I want to go back to school. I want to go to your schools. Catalina, what do you do? What's part of your onboarding process?
Well, I made a note of the hopes and dreams, Tim. Thank you for that idea. I wanted to also mention the link that we try to make with other parents from the community, because there's one, obviously we do orientation days, and just like Tim mentioned, we involve the counselors. They have transition workshops, either for new families coming in or for families transiting out of our school. And we offer logistical support. So for example, a family, all they have to do is say, we're leaving. And then they come to me, and then I contact the other school. I handle the references. So today, we even test the kids on our side for other schools. So all these logistical things. But the thing I wanted to mention, in addition to what Tim said, was establishing a link with parents already at our school, maybe from the same nationality or with kids of the same age, buddy system between the kids, because these kids are special. They understand, they've been there, they know how hard it is. And so chances are that they'll find much more empathy for the situation they're in.
Sergio, do you agree with what Tim said at the beginning of his point there, which is getting it wrong is one of the most damaging things that can happen to a child?
Absolutely. It will take a long time to recover from getting it wrong in the first place. I think that there are many aspects of transition that are fundamental, and we have dedicated a lot of time to think about that in ourselves. And what we did was to map the transition for parents, for students, and for teachers, and follow this through long before they arrive in our school. And perhaps the best way I can summarize what we've achieved is to stop thinking that our school is that center of the universe, is the sun, where the families migrate to, but it's just part of a constellation. It's our Copernican revolution, is the best way of defining this. And we're just one planet in this journey that their family is going through. And it's our job to see them through, not only to come into our school, but the process of leaving it and enduring. And we divide this into parents, teachers, and students. If I may just say one more thing that put a little bit in context transition in Qatar. Qatar, in many ways, is a very or Doha is a very cosmopolitan town, in the sense that the diversity of schools available here, international schools, is probably just as wide as New York or London, except that although the diversity is broad, the number of schools is very limited, demand is very high, and therefore parents seeking for a school in this part of the world, given all the discussion we had, they have to do their homework, whether under pandemic or not, long before they arrive here, because if they don't guarantee a place in school before they arrive in this country, they will have a very bad start. They will find the schools indeed, but they'll be full. And our school is not an exception.
Presumably, Fiona, that's where someone like you comes in, because you know about lead times and how to go through the process. But on that issue of transition, how do parents fully understand what they should be looking for in terms of the kind of experience they're going to have when they arrive?
I'm not sure that they really do. I think the whole experience can be incredibly overwhelming. When you arrive in a new country for the first time with children, you've uprooted yourself from your own background, you've left your support system behind, and it can be very isolating. And I think from my experience, the schools that handle this best treat it as a very holistic experience, and they really are transitioning the whole family, because, unhappy mum, unhappy child, and vice versa. So I think it is very much about including the family in. It is about, making sure that obviously that the child settles well. And I think what's very interesting about out here is that, particularly in the UAE, pretty much everybody is new to this country at some point. So there's a huge level of empathy of welcoming people, because we've all been there. We all know what it feels like to be new, and it is quite scary and overwhelming. And so people are very open and very chatty and very welcoming about that. And that, I think, is true of the children in the classroom, but it's also true of other parents in the school who are very quick to pick up newcomers and to integrate them into their group. So I think if parents knew how traumatic it was going to be, they probably wouldn't do it. So it's probably just as well they don't know. But I think the schools that do handle it well can really make a huge difference. And from my perspective, it's all about the research. If we've worked with that family for a while, identifying the right schools, checking availability, as you quite rightly pointed out, so we can really help that transition be much, much smoother by having time, by making sure the parents are fully briefed and that they're really comfortable about the school that they've chosen, and how they're going to integrate. And they start building a relationship with that school before they actually get here and hit the ground.
Catalina, you heard Sergio there advising parents to do their research very, very early. You obviously are involved in admissions. What would your very practical advice be to people watching now who are planning a move about what they need to know before choosing a school, and what they need to do to apply?
Very quickly, 5 things. So first of all, do your homework in terms of getting to know the schools and finding out the option that works best for you. If it's possible, there are countries where you only have one option. So get a seat there. Number 2, prepare school reports. Many of the international schools that you might be moving to may ask you for English translations, and not reports from just 1 year. So make sure you go prepared. That's going to make the application process easier for you. Many of the schools ask for references, because references offer different information than school reports. And so you might want to talk to teachers who know your children the best and can offer the best information, so that when they go to a new school, your children can be served in the best way. And of course, other documents such as IDs and any kind of medical information. That would be number 4. Number 5, don't forget, if your child has any kind of learning support needs, individualized educational plan, any kind of psychoeducational reports. If they arrive in our office early, that means that, for example, in my case, I can involve the student services specialist early on. We can have Skype conversations, and we can start really developing this process early. And that's good for you as parents, because you can then check the school off the list and get on with the other things.
Thank you for that. You've clearly said those 5 points before. Excellent. Just what we need. Tim, I wonder if you would add anything to that checklist? What should parents be doing?
Yeah, I think I would encourage parents to see their child as an individual learner, unique, and make sure that the school is ready to welcome that child, whoever that child is, into their environment. If a school starts telling you that a child needs to be this or that a child needs to act like this or learn this way, then it's probably not a good fit, because your child is a unique individual, and you need a school that is going to welcome that child as a unique individual and meet that child's needs, not the other child, not all the other children, but your child's needs. And I think that's the most important thing to look for in a school.
And Sergio, apart from starting the process very, very early, what other advice would you give to parents who are planning a move or contemplating a move?
I think that the match, the understanding of the school, the child is thriving in their local country, so that a proper match against the school they're going to go. For instance, let me just give maybe an example that is specific to this country. We have a very large international sector here, and an equally or larger local schools that is completely not accessible to, is not an option for any expat families. So if you're moving to Europe or America, getting into a local school is one of the options for families. It's not here. The curriculum program, the language, some of the particular dialect in Arabic. Even if you speak Arabic, you will find it very difficult to blend in. And I don't know of anyone who have gone into the local schools. So an understanding of what is it that you're looking for out of a school is fundamental. So talking to admissions officers around the world is very helpful there.
Catalina, your phone's going to be ringing off the hook now that Sergio has invited everybody to ring you. Fiona Murchie, what's your observation through the many years that you've been dealing with schools and families about the process that families need to go through?
I find it quite shocking that a lot of them are not prepared at all, and not that even in this day and age, you think that a family can up sticks and move at the drop of the hat, and they obviously can't. And families are hugely always aspirational for their children. They want the best for their children, and so that's probably their number one priority. So really, I think increasing this awareness about engagement with the employees and the employees who are parents, that if they are going to introduce a move, that they consult with them, that they understand both parents' perspective and what position the child is in the education stage. And also these people, the people who are managing them, may not, and this is what we find a lot, may not know anything at all about education systems, their own education system in their own country. They may be quite young, and the last time they looked at a school was when they were at school, and are absolutely fearful about contemplating a French education, American education, and what on earth does the IB mean? So just don't underestimate. And really, if employers had that sort of openness to transition and the importance, and also understood third culture cultures, they maybe have a high population of those themselves, it would also seep into the transition of those adult employees as well. And of course, these are the future talent for them, their pipeline into successful jobs and careers.
I was going to say Fiona M, but you're both M, so this is clearly not helpful at all. Fiona, parents watching this now, planning obviously in plenty of time for the move, first thing they should do after they've watched this webinar?
Apart from contact us. No, I think the first thing to do, I mean, I think it's very interesting actually what Fiona was just saying, because actually we do a lot of work briefing companies on education systems so that actually their HR teams are aware of the kind of challenges that families might face. And we do a lot of education planning for families who don't know when they're going to move. So what happens if we move in a year's time? What happens if we move in 2 years' time? What's the impact of that for our family? And then that actually arms the families to go to the company and say, look, I need to be here for another 2 years for this. My child needs to finish this stage of their education, and then I'm free to move again. So I think it's all about information on both sides to facilitate what Fiona was describing. And I think, unfortunately, lots of people don't have a long lead-in time to this. A lot of my experiences with families who have been told they're moving at really quite short notice. And I think international schools are very good at dealing with that, because people come and people go. But I think the first thing that, you know, if parents are being told they're going to move, the first thing they need to do is to start exploring the education options in the city or country that they're going to be living in, to establish whether there's a suitable environment for their child to be educated, because that has to be a key part of that decision-making process. And I always say to families moving to this part of the world, please choose your school before you choose where you're going to live, because actually that is also, you know, you need to get that bit right, because actually the school has to be the priority. Because if you get that bit right, as the others have said, you know, you can't mess up your child's education. That has to be a huge priority. And as Fiona pointed out, they are the future talent for these companies. So it's really worth investing and looking after them.
And they're the future of our world, as we established at the beginning of this conversation. I'm going to ask you to give me your final thoughts on what you are looking forward to most when the COVID era is finished. Catalina, you're smiling, so I'm going to ask you.
Our kids back.
Just that, kids back. The sound. Do you know, I walked past a playground, a school with, you know, the children out playing the other day, and I stopped and listened to the
silence
back.
The silence is deafening these days.
Yeah. Tim, what about you? What are you looking forward to?
Well, most of our students are back. So we have been on campus learning since the beginning of the school year, and we want that to continue. So for me, what I look forward to the most when COVID is over is going to a jazz club.
Yeah, I get that. We're all craving, aren't we, live music? Sergio, what about you?
Yeah, well, we operate on this 30%. We can only have 1/3 of the students in school at any one day, and under a lot of restrictions. This 2 meters apart, and they can only touch the things they bring with them. It's very artificial, very strange scene. I look for the time that we go back to that feeling of a very busy place, very high-paced place where too many things are happening and everybody's tired of seeing so much happening in one day. And what I enjoy the most is stopping the corridors, having a chat, informal chat, seeing the people walking around and speaking, and that little quick chat you have in making this daily contacts, and with this internet world, it's all way too formal for my taste.
Yeah, and requires forward planning. Fiona Mckenzie, what are you looking forward to? Is it a jazz club or is it the sound of children laughing?
I think I'm looking forward to spontaneity. Again, I think everything at the moment has to be quite pre-planned. You know, even in schools, children, the one-way systems, you can't just kick a football around and muck around with your mates. So I'm looking forward to everybody being able to have that element of spontaneity back into their lives again.
Yeah, well, hopefully there is a light at the end of the tunnel. We just hope the tunnel is not very, very long. Sadly, we've come to the end of our session today. Thank you so much to our guests, Catalina, Sergio, Tim, and Fiona. such an interesting conversation. I hope you watching have got insights and advice that are going to empower you to make the right decisions for your family and your children. The fair has one more week to run. There are loads of resources for you to look at, information on the events on the website. And you can catch up, of course, on other webinars that we've already run. There was a very good one actually on transitioning. There was another one that I was involved in that was fascinating about single sex versus co-ed. And this morning there was one all about Asian schools. So do look.
And their contact details are on the screen, and we will be able to provide those if you have registered with us. And then, just as Jane was mentioning, we've got a very packed programme of webinars we've been holding. And coming up shortly, we've got Exploring Education in France and the education system in France, as well as the French language and French curricular schools around the world. There is a highlight for all of you on Crossroads, which is International School of London, and this will showcase more the transition programme that we've been hearing about today. And then there is a spotlight on Ho Chi Minh City and Vietnam, where the school is going to talk about a truly international school at Ishmi. And then, of course, exploring differing cultures and curriculums. So we'll be looking at that in our final week and bringing everything together. So thank you again to all of you for joining us. As Jane has said, there's plenty of information on our website, and please email education@relocateglobal.com if you require any more details. Thank you very much, and we look forward to meeting you all again. Thank you to our team. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye. Thank you.